Ruth Dawson was 68 years old. She had lived alone in the same rental house in a small Ohio town for 8 years. Her husband Gerald had passed away 7 years earlier. Since then it had been just her in the house. The deposit she had paid when she moved in was her entire savings. $220,000. Every dollar of it built over 35 years of careful, quiet living. She and Gerald had planned to buy a small place with that money. Nothing large. A single-story house with a yard, maybe a porch. But Gerald had gotten sick not long before they were ready to make the move. Kidney failure at first, then complications. They put the purchase off until he recovered. He did not recover. He was gone within a year of the diagnosis. Ruth moved into the rental and stayed. She had no particular reason to leave. The neighborhood was familiar. The woman next door brought tomatoes from her garden in summer. The retired schoolteacher 2 houses down walked with her on evenings when Ruth was not too tired. Small things, but they held. She renewed the lease twice. 8 years passed. The landlord, a man named Brennan, had always seemed reliable. He answered calls. He fixed things when they broke. He did not raise the rent. Ruth thought little about the arrangement. She paid on time and he held up his end. That was all she required. The first sign of trouble came 6 months before the lease was due again. Ruth tried calling Brennan to discuss renewal. He did not answer. She left a voicemail. She sent a text. 3 days went by. She tried again. Nothing. She told herself he was probably busy. But the silence stretched into a week. And something in her began to pay closer attention. The certified letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Ruth brought it in from the mailbox with her coffee still in hand. The return address was a federal court. She set the coffee down and opened the envelope carefully at the kitchen table. The document inside used language she was not familiar with. But certain phrases were plain enough. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. Property lien in default. The address at the top was her address. She called her son David in Columbus. She read him the letter over the phone. There was a pause on his end, longer than usual. Then he said he would look into it and call her back. He called back that evening. His voice was different. "Mom, I pulled the property records. There are liens on that house going back years before you ever moved in. The total amount owed is more than the house is worth. If it goes to foreclosure sale, the mortgage holders get paid first. There may be nothing left for your deposit." Nothing at all. Ruth sat with the phone in her hand for a long time after he said that. $220,000. The number moved through her the way cold water does. She thought about what that money represented. The summers she and Gerald had not run the air conditioning past 80. The years they had taken their vacations within driving distance. Because flying felt like spending money they might need later. The birthday dinners she had suggested eating at home rather than at a restaurant. Because cooking was just as good. She always said, even when it wasn't quite true. Gerald had never argued with her about those things. He had understood, the same way she did, that they were building towards something. That something had been the small house. The one with the porch. She tried Brennan's number again the next day. And the day after. No answer, no call back. David drove up the following weekend. He had already found a housing attorney online and made an appointment. The attorney reviewed the title search and the foreclosure filing. She told them the lien amounts exceeded what any realistic sale could cover. The chances of Ruth recovering her deposit through the foreclosure process alone were very low. She outlined the options. File a formal claim in the foreclosure proceedings. Report Brennan to the state attorney general for fraud. Pursue a civil suit directly. None of it was fast. None of it guaranteed anything. Ruth listened carefully. She asked a few questions. She signed what needed signing. On the drive back to her house afterward, she watched the flat Ohio farmland going by and did not say much. David kept talking, outlining steps, making plans. She let him. She was grateful for it. That night she could not sleep. She lay in the dark of the bedroom. She had arranged the same way for 8 years and thought about Gerald. About the summer he had worked a second job on weekends. To add faster to what they were saving. About the winter he had worn his work coat inside the house because the furnace needed replacing. And they were not going to touch the savings for that. About the evening after his retirement dinner when they had sat at the same kitchen table. and she had shown him the balance in the savings account. And he had been quiet for a moment and then said, "That's enough. That's our house right there." He had looked proud, not of the amount but of the patience that had produced it. She had kissed him on the cheek. He had laughed. That was 18 months before the diagnosis. David moved quickly. He filed a formal claim in the foreclosure proceedings to establish Ruth as a creditor. He reported Brennan to the Ohio Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. He filed a civil complaint. He also contacted a local news outlet, which ran a story. After it emerged that Brennan had taken similar deposits from tenants in 2 other properties, Ruth declined to appear on camera. She did not explain why, exactly. She just said no. David understood. The foreclosure sale happened 4 months later. The proceeds paid the senior mortgage holders. After that there was a small remainder. Ruth received a portion of her original deposit, roughly half. The rest was gone. David told her the number on a Sunday afternoon, sitting at her kitchen table. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Well, at least it's something." David did not answer. He looked out the window. A renter fraud compensation fund at the state level provided additional relief. Combined with what came from the foreclosure, Ruth eventually recovered about 60% of what she had deposited. The remaining 40% was simply gone. $88,000. Gone. Brennan was charged with multiple counts of fraud. Ruth gave a written victim statement for the prosecution. She did not attend the sentencing hearing. She did not need to see him to know what she wanted to say, and she was not sure. Saying it in a courtroom would change how she felt. He received a prison sentence. The money did not come back. Ruth lives in a small apartment now, a few miles from David's house. He found it for her. She pays monthly rent, something she had never done in her adult life until this year. David helps with part of it. She accepts the help because she has no other practical choice. But she accepts it quietly, without getting used to it. There is a difference between needing help and expecting it. And Ruth intends to stay on the right side of that line for as long as she can. Some mornings she makes coffee and stands at the kitchen window and thinks about the house she and Gerald were going to buy. Not with grief exactly, more like reading the last page of a book you already knew the ending of. The story closed the way it closed. She knows what was in it. Rental fraud is reported as statistics. Dollars lost, number of victims, years sentenced. But the statistics do not contain the summers without air conditioning, or the birthdays eaten at home, or the evening at the kitchen table when Gerald said, "That's enough, that's our house right there." The law recovered part of it. It could not recover the patience that built it, or the man who sat across from her when she thought they had finally reached something. Ruth gets up every morning anyway. David is nearby. The apartment has a window that faces east. That is where she starts. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe. There are lives like this one everywhere, built carefully and quietly over many years. We will keep telling them. Thank you for listening all the way through.